Welcome to Lovin Daily, brought to you by Browns and You. I'm your host, Sam Vasallo, joined today by Lovin Malta's editor, Tim Diacono. And it's another Monday in the pandemic. And here are the headlines today. Malta awaits today restriction easing on restaurants and hair salons. The plans for prefabricated hospital have been scrapped after COVID-19 beds remain empty. An antibody test with 100% sensitivity to COVID-19 has officially arrived in Malta. A bar in Spinola sets the record straight following a fight between 6 Spaniards and police, and 3 are set to be charged with starting a devastating fire at l-Aħrax. Quite big news today. How are you, Tim?
I'm not bad. How's it going, Sam?
Pretty good. Nice to be at the office again.
Yes. So let's get into it. As you said, today is going to be, it's set to be a pretty big day in terms of Malta's fight against the COVID-19 pandemic, as the Prime Minister is set to announce the details of the latest batch of restriction easing, which is going to impact restaurants and hair salons. So,
indeed. So hairdressers and restaurants are set to be announced that they will be allowed to open hopefully by this week. Prime Minister Roberto Bella is set to make an announcement today, and it seems that the further easing of these measures has really divided the nation, and not just into two. There's the vulnerable versus healthy, those who have secure jobs, those who are waiting, for the tourism sector to reopen, and they're in very precarious situations. And I don't know, what do you make of this?
So obviously the measures themselves have yet to be announced, but obviously it has triggered an immense debate. Let's not forget that there was a similar debate to the debate that erupted 2 weeks ago when the government announced the first batch of restriction easing measures. But yes, obviously people are looking at this in different ways. So there are some people who are saying, or asking, was our sacrifice, that we carried out over the past 2 months, 2.5 months of staying at home, not meeting people, barely ever going out, was it all for nothing? Are we now going to, has the government just given up trying to get rid of this virus, and is it just caving into the demands of businessmen? But there's also another reality, which is that public funds are what they are. There is no way that the government can keep on propping up businesses forever or for such a long time, while simultaneously losing millions in unpaid revenue because people aren't working or buying. And it's just a completely unsustainable situation as well. So very difficult decisions have to be made. But at the end of the day, sometime or other, lockdown restrictions are going to have to be eased. It's something that every country or most countries in the world are realizing. Even Italy is opening its hair salons and restaurants today, so even earlier than Malta. And obviously the situation in both countries are completely different. And yes, and it's unrealistic also to wait for a vaccine, because no one knows when it's going to be produced. Or if it's going to be produced, there's no guarantee that it will, and it's completely unrealistic to tell people to just stay at home, force the businesses to close until this vaccine is out. So we have to wait and see, obviously, what the measures are going to be. But yeah, it's not an easy situation, obviously.
At the end of the day, we both know that the strategy was never to completely get rid of COVID-19. There was never going to be a point where we hit 0 cases and it was going to remain like that. That the virus is with us. The virus might be with us forever, and the whole strategy was, don't let the hospitals be overwhelmed. And as we know, the hospitals have been nowhere near overwhelmed. In fact, that brings us to our next story, which is that Abella has also confirmed that Malta would not be buying a prefabricated hospital as was previously planned. So in light of the potential of lifting of these measures, Abella has announced that this, they had opened this call for a tender to build this ready-made hospital that would have 90 beds specifically to treat COVID-19 patients. And in light of how well Malta is dealing with the situation, we won't be going ahead to get this hospital, which is fantastic news, in fact, because I believe there's only around 14 patients across all the hospitals in Malta battling COVID-19, and none are in ITU.
So yes, Sam, the Prime Minister obviously was there was a lot of discussion about what he said about yesterday about what he said about the restriction easing, about the way he kind of dismissed the threat of a second wave by saying that the waves belong to the sea. But he also made a very interesting point, and which isn't spoken about enough, in my opinion, which is that Malta has really handled this pandemic well. So first of all, more than 98% of our closed cases have recovered, which is very high. We are testing more per capita than all but a few countries in the world. So our testing has actually increased from like daily average of 700 to 800 to 1,400 or 500 or even 700 or 1,700 on Saturday. And as you rightly said, our hospitals have remained pretty empty. So at the moment, there's something like 13 or 14 COVID-19 patients spread across 3 or 4 different hospitals. Crucially, no one is receiving intensive care at the moment, so no ventilators are being used. And the fact that the government has actually scrapped this plan for a prefabricated hospital, which was an emergency contingency measure just in case we ever run out of space, shows that they don't expect the situation to aggravate by that much. Not just now, but ever, right? I mean, because otherwise you'll still create this hospital.
And listen, I don't think the WHO would call us a model country for nothing, I mean, clearly we're dealing with this well, and we will continue to hopefully keep the situation under control without, mass economic devastation. It's a very iffy little balance over there. But I think somehow we'll make it. We won't be the first, and we won't be the last to ease these measures.
No, we won't, and it's not as simple as some people are claiming, that it's about risking people's lives for the sake of the economy. At the end of the day, the economy isn't an abstract concept. It's much wider. It also includes a healthcare system. So millions of euro in public funds are poured into our healthcare system every day, which is great. But if the government isn't receiving revenue and simultaneously is having to, spend 800 euro a month on every person who's out of a job because their business has been forced to close down, I mean, it's just common sense that tells you that it's completely unsustainable. In better news as well, there was an antibody test, right, which has been hailed across the world as having a 100% sensitivity to COVID-19. It's going to be rolled out in Malta, I suppose, imminently. Now, the details of how it's going to happen, haven't been published yet, but what we do know is that a Maltese pharmaceutical importer company called Vivian has managed to acquire these tests from Roche, which is a Swiss pharmaceutical company which has developed these antibody tests. And they've also been acquired by St. James Hospital, and they're saying they're going to be rolled out to the Maltese public in super record time. Now, why are these tests so important? Well, what they do is, what the plan is that it will allow governments worldwide to determine how much of the population has been infected by this virus so far. As we know, but we haven't always known this, many of the cases of COVID-19 are actually asymptomatic. So you will get the virus, you will still be able to transmit it, but you won't feel any symptoms at all. Now, if you're asymptomatic, chances are that you're not going to get tested unless you're either part of a contact tracing program or if you're if you're part of a random testing sample, for example, you're a healthcare worker. Otherwise, the chances are you won't get tested. Now, this means that our figures of COVID-19 cases don't necessarily represent the true reality of the situation, but the number of cases which are getting caught. So hopefully, with these tests, we will be able to determine how far the virus has spread and, crucially, what its mortality rate is. So currently in Malta, it's something like 1%. When these tests are out, we'll probably find out it's even lower.
Super. It's going to be a game changer. Finally, we found that test that is 100% accurate. So, and then there's the whole debate about, as we don't know what kind of immunity having COVID-19 brings you. Is it life immunity? Does it last a few months? But that brings up a whole other debate as to the future of how we're going to deal with this, especially with airports and testing, and borders and all this stuff.
I think what's important is that a lot of numbers are being thrown out. There are a lot of predictions, a lot of very scary predictions, also by some people who should know better, and hopefully these tests will actually give us a more accurate view of the actual situation, so that policies can be based on facts and not predictions or assumptions or suggestions by certain people. So
I think what people forget as well, that even though we have experts and we should trust them, nobody really knows. Everyone, fine, experts can make an educated guess, but it's still a guess, So we can't, just take it as religion every time something comes out, or if you're constantly pressed to the news and so on and so forth.
Do you have an educated guess as to what happened in Spinola last weekend?
I do have an educated guess, actually, as to what happened. So that's bringing it back to local news. So a bar in Spinola has spoken out about recent allegations. So there's a bar in Spinola called Happy Days, but this particular day on a Friday was not so happy because it was in the center of a fracas. So essentially, there was a bunch of people, over 4 people, drinking outside this bar, and obviously police were notified and went down, to inform them that they're breaking the legal notice of 4 people per group, and the situation completely escalated. 6 people were arrested for assaulting police, and police threatened to sue the bar. Now, the bar itself has finally spoken out and has distanced themselves completely from the people who were arrested, saying that, first of all, they were not operating illegally. They were just, operating for takeout drinks. And the people in question were away from the bar, drinking in their cars and on public land. So it kind of had nothing to do with them, supposedly. What do you think about this? People are arrested to say now.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite difficult to use individual cases as like a real example of what's happening, but I think it's quite clear that there is a growing sense of restlessness. The fact that the weather has considerably improved and that summer is, if not here, very clearly on our doorstep. I think there is this sense of people, not wanting to stay at home throughout, as well as the messages being given out by government that we want you to go to the beach. As well yesterday. Obviously, the laws are still in place. Any gathering of more than 4 people in public is illegal. In fact, I wonder whether this will actually be easy. There was no mention of that. But then, even in terms of restaurants, so you can't go out to eat if you're a group of 5. I don't know. Like it's something that we'll have to wait and see. What we also
discussed today, hopefully by Abela.
Yes. What we'll also have to wait and see is also the details of a devastating fire that erupted at l-Aħrax in Mellieha over the weekend. Now, police have arrested 3 people, and they're set to charge them imminently. what appears to have happened, unfortunately, is that these three people were out camping. The Mellieha Council is not issuing permits to campers at the moment because of the pandemic, but these people went anyway. So, and they set a fire, as all campers do, and somewhere or other, this fire got out of hand, and it spread, and they lost control. And what appears to have happened is that they ran away, and we don't know why. Maybe they thought they couldn't get caught, but one of the people left a mobile phone behind him, and obviously then its identity could easily be traced, and the police managed to arrest him and his friends. Obviously, this very unfortunate incident comes in the wake of an ongoing discussion as to whether l-Aħrax, as well as Mizib nearby, should be handed over to the hunting lobby during hunting hours of the spring and autumn hunting season. And whatever you make of it, this fire is only going to strengthen hunters' cause. In fact, they issued a statement, they've taken case saying that this shows the responsibility of campers, compared to the responsibility of hunters.
I think it's completely unfair that hunters are allowed to go out and hunt, and people are not allowed to camp, and we've been told up until now to stay inside. And we're going to talk about handing over this land, public land, of which there is so little in Malta, especially woodlands, to this group to take over for 9 months of the season. I mean, I'm personally against it. That's my opinion. So that's all for today. Thank you for joining us for another edition of Lovin Malta. Once again, I am Sam Vassallo, joined by Lovin Malta's editor, Tim Diacono. And finally, a tip from Browns and you, amidst this whole pandemic and trying to keep healthy and safe, it's super, super important to eat well and stay away from sugar. I know that we're all doing our Netflix binges and that we're all usually having that junk food, but as we all know now, sugar can weaken the immune system. So it's super important to stock up on those fruit and veggies. Make a smoothie if you have a sweet tooth, and keep your immune systems as strong as possible in this time. Stay safe, keep diligent, and that was Lovin Daily.